invites. Had a pretty pleasant night last night. And a whole lot of things came full circle for me in meditation. And when I woke up from my nap last night and meditated more, I had an experience. So I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about what I normally don't talk about openly in my path, because these are all things I had to keep to myself so I could find my way out of the muck and the mire. Things that we hold near and dear to who and what we are on the inside. So I'm going to talk a little bit about philosophy, the Ain Sophia. Sophia is the divine wisdom, the highest point in the Kabbalistic tree is called Kethra, which means the same as Ain Soph to the Greek traditions, and Sophia in the philosophies. So I'm gonna do a couple more invites, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that. Because I don't know if Facebook on that stuff. But anyway, so when we go through these positions, we look at the serpent on the staff, Kundalini rise. We look at the catalytic tree, the struggle tree, the gears, the mouthpiece. We look at the middle pillar in between the gift from the Lord, the end of the middle pillar in between faith and the love of society. And we have these things tied to gears that we call philosophies. Philosophy itself is supposed to be the love of Sophia, or the fidelity, being faithful to Sophia, Sophia being the wisdom. And so, when you're really looking at it for what it is, they tell you as above, so below, as within, so without. So we find ourselves unraveling this mystery that we live in this three dimension. At some point, I came to realize that all of this is trickery and deception that we willingly accept on the physical level and on the mental level. When you get to the spiritual level, people so caught up in the physical world as truth of reality that they neglect that the spirit realm is real too. And from that standpoint, you can never assimilate a superior wisdom or a superior spiritual insight into anything, because you're closing your mind off. To close the mind off to everything except one thing is foolish, because you can't think your way out of a box that way. You remain stuck in prison because of this. So when I was little, I used to have this periodic dream, and it was tied to my lower bearing samadhi. It was tied to a ritual done in Detroit back over 100 years ago by some very prominent men to make sure that we had all of our bets hedged in. So I would have this dream of this little Caucasian girl, she looked like a kid, but you can tell she was older. In the dream, she was small like a kid, but you could tell she was like an older woman, and that she had a lot of suffering she had taken. And throughout my life, either she's chasing me around the house or I'm chasing her around the house. It was a back and forth thing in this dream. And I used to always wonder to myself what it meant. And it came to me last night, what it was. So we had these ideas, and these ideas are like computer programs on your computer. And they are there to activate a different program at the correct time. And it's all mental. If you are doing your spiritual pursuits and your mental processes are going to be taking place, because you have to rationalize left brain what you internalize spiritually, right brain. So you have to bring those two things together. So everything that you think that you're chasing externally, you actually chasing it internally. So what we see that we chase outside ourselves is what we chasing on the inside. So this woman is definitely chasing a man. She got to have a man. Her masculine, her sense of self and power and her divine masculine aspect is low. So that which she's seeking within, she's chasing externally. She's trying to find a man to balance the feminine because it's too out of balance. So here we are searching for balance. The balance needs to take place internally first before the balance can take place externally. But we never pursuing the development of the self to the level to figure it out. You know, it's like in the Matrix, very few people realize Neo is an anagram for one, Eon, and Morpheus means he who transforms, and also is tied to Orpheus or Morph, and it's tied to the god of sleep. Anyway, so the dreams, Morpheus and Neo are actually alter egos, and they taking these two different roles. But most people don't realize this during the course of the movie. Everything that Morpheus has done in the physical, now his alter is doing in the spiritual. Before he can raise his physical self up to his spiritual qualities, he had to first develop internally. So if you see, first it started off Neo as a computer hacker. Then he realized that not only is he a computer hacker, shit, he the owner of the computer in essence. He can run through the computer whole reality, the reality computer, the Matrix. That's the baddest computer hack he could ever do. And so you realize that at this point, Morpheus is outside the Matrix. What we don't realize is that the underground city is the underworld. In the religious traditions, they talk about the underworld in the Sheol, in the place where the souls are kept. Because if you pay attention, they leave from there and they come back to the surface and the machines are running the world. But all of the real people are trapped in a underworld. But this is all going on within the self. When I went in meditation one time and I walked what I perceived as the underworld, and I seen all these various different creatures of different shapes and forms, I didn't tell nobody about that because people don't understand that type of stuff, but I knew exactly what was taking place. And I'm looking around because I gotta review the grievances of mankind before I could even come up with a viable solution. So you listen to all of the grievances are the same. That, you know, we tired of suffering, we tired of the oppression, you know, we tired of the death, all of those basic same grievances everywhere you go. And in order to understand the problem, you have to have seen it and lived through it and survived it in order to be able to analyze it from an experience point of view, as opposed to a book learnt point of view where you borrowing somebody else's insight in order to enhance your own. When you live through a thing, it gives you a deeper understanding of the problem, because you have been either part of the problem or part of the solution. Where we at right now, and we looking around at all of the signs, And we looking at the times, it's different. We seeing things in front of our face and we ignoring them. The human being is ignoring every sign that they get from the realm of spirit to tell them to wake up. We are collectively ignoring it. The ones who are aware and they see the signs and they know what time it is and they know who's who and what's what, and the ridicule rolls out of a misunderstanding or a misplaced sense of affection, or not really understanding the moves being made, whatever the case might be. I didn't never intend on a conscious level as a child to be able to be on this level of understanding the problem. So in order to offer the solutions, the people have to want the solution. They don't really want the solution, because what I'm seeing is, instead of the solution that they ask for, what they asking for actually is to more of the same. Don't nobody want, if they want something to cry about, complain about, bitch about, moan about. You know, now we're looking at it from the lens of higher wisdom, and you're looking at how can I help Earth and humanity as a whole escape from this bondage and oppression. You look at the enlightened and the unenlightened alike. You don't overlook none. And everybody that's complaining about the suffering and the oppression is holding the suffering and oppression afflicting agent upon themselves and refuse to release it. And so you got an oppressor that's trying to leave, and you got an oppressed that's trying to hold him down. Don't leave me, oppressor. I like this pain and suffering. If you take it away, I don't have nothing to complain about. I might be able to be happy for a change. Don't take away my afflictions. Well, I understand, because I never asked for anybody to move my mountain. I just wanted to be strong enough to climb it and navigate the obstacles along the way. I needed the wisdom. And my mama always told me as a little boy that if I seek wisdom, you know, that I could probably wind up being as wise as Solomon. Or she said, if I'm really lucky, I can probably even be wiser than Solomon and not make the same mistakes he made, whatever they were. But I think the biggest problem right now, when you get to a certain level of training in various aspects, and you're looking at the problem from all angles, the biggest problem now is the oppressed love to be oppressed. And those who are in the know, the wise ones, as they call them, are being, it has to be a form of arrogance. It's the only thing I can ascribe to it, where they want you to move according to how they want you to move and don't really know what you're doing, because nobody ain't supposed to know. Handling the truth, we as a saying, fools rush in where wise men dare to tread. The truth is one of those arenas, and now you find out what is one of the major causes of deception among those in the know. Because the truth, somebody can tell you the truth and hurt you worse than if they hit you in the head with an axe. You hit somebody in the ego with the truth, and that's going to hurt them, because they have to face the fact that this true. And that, in my case, people don't really doubt that it's true. They just hate they had to get it from me. Out of all of the people on this planet, 8.3 billion, I had to tell this motherfucker what his problem was and what the solution was, and now I'm resented for it, because out of all of the motherfuckers on this planet, I had to get the answer from you. So, I mean, I would be glad to get the answer, the right answer, from wherever the right answer at. I don't care what the vessel look like. I accept the right answer from a 2-year-old as well as I do a 102-year-old. It wouldn't matter to me. If it's the right answer, it's the right answer. If it's going to solve the problem, it's going to solve the problem. So now we're looking at wisdom, right? Ein Sof. We're looking at the raising of the energy, the love energy, and the intellectual wisdom, the higher realm of wisdom. We need to marry these two at the crown. And at this point, you have to match everything internally to what's going on externally, and got to remember all of the external stuff is to remind you what you're chasing within. And so the little girl from my dreams, that was the old lady, we played a chase game my whole life. Either she was chasing me or I was chasing her. And this morning in meditation, she stopped and she turned around and stopped running from me and looked me dead in my face, and she said, "It's time. We ain't running no more." Then a couple days ago, I seen a duality becoming a singularity. And then I realized that I don't like to talk about love because people use the word as an agent of veiled abuse. You talk about love, you talk about slick usage of words in order to pursue your selfish agenda of conquering somebody else's weakness for the desire to be cared about. So I ain't really into really talking about love, so to speak, in that regard. But the energy that is originally represented before the beauty of poetry was stolen and used by the cunning and the slick to abuse the words, so that the words can be used to abuse the people, especially the women. And so I don't talk too much about the love response. I don't use the word a lot. But the idea and the concept and the understanding of it, for me, is entirely different as you're trying to weed through things and see through the veil. You know, I done walked to the edge of creation, internally and externally. I've seen it all. But these people, the level of apathy for anything that benefits them, nobody want to do the work. They want it all handed to them. They all feel entitled. They all feel like they owed something, but they haven't done anything to have earned nothing. But they want to sit in the honor seat. And then they don't like the ones who earned it being in those positions because they earned it. They making them look bad because they do their work. They do their due diligence. They endure their suffering and pain. The entitlement mentality comes from where? How can you never have nothing and feel entitled? How can you never been nothing and feel entitled? Where did that come from? And so we were told that it was enmity between her seed and his seed. Well, who is her? Ein Sof, the divine wisdom. Well, who was he? He was the Adam Decadmon. He was the physical body. And so you needed the solo man, or the soul of a man, in order to marry the two. It's a cycle. You got to first build the physical man into a worthy vessel. That's the construction of Solomon's temple. Once you done did the work to build the physical temple into a worthy vessel, now you have to acquire the wisdom of the age. You have to chase Ein Sof. You have to catch Sophia. But Sophia don't give up so easy because she's driven by this passionate fire we call love. I don't like to use the word. I would have rather just settled for the passionate fire. It's the fire of the heart that, as the body begins to become an upright man, and that wisdom go through that fire in the heart, now they call this the flaming serpent. We are watching the ascent of the phoenix rising from its own ashes. And so we have to go through that fire, that passion, that what they call in smokeless, gasless fire. Remember, man was made up of four. earth, air, fire, and water. That's what set man apart. So you have the stonemasons who had to teach us how to build temples. What is a stone made of? What's concrete mix? Water and earth. Two of the four elements. The earth is in various forms in order to get the solidifying effect. So that tell you right there that the earth and the water, gonna make something hard. A fixed state of water is called ice. The zodiacal sign of the Scorpio is in a fixed state of water. It's frozen. So from here, water being in a fixed state, frozen. How do you unfreeze all water? You need heat. But it got to be a fixed and steady temperature, steady heat. It has to be a fixed position of fire as it goes through that heart center, or else it won't melt that core. And when the fire in the water, we know that's going to make steam. Water just became a gas. Matter just became spirit. We ain't paying attention. We watching it out there play out. But we don't want to live it internally, because then we have to face our demons. We have to face our lower base desires for illicit things. Yeah. We need things to complain about, so that give us the excuse not to do what we know we ought to do in order to get up on our feet. We look for shit to complain about. And then the person that's pointing it out to you has to be insane. He got to be crazy, because he won't accept the oppressor's foot on his neck in telling us that we shouldn't accept it either. So he's got to be insane. You goddamn right he insane. What is insanity? It's a mental illness. It means to think outside of the collective. Anybody who don't think within the collective is insane according to them. Now, what do they have to do? Pay attention to your doctors. What do they do when they classify you as insane? Narcotics. They used to do electric shocks and lobotomies in order to put you back into the category that they call sane, which means you fit in with the cattle. You fit in as chattel. You can now once again be controlled. Every now and then, there's one motherfucker that's uncontrollable against all odds, against the man-inflicted brain damage, against the bumps and the falls and the trips and the obstacles and the jealousies and the envies and the hatreds, because none of that don't even matter. Somebody got to walk the walk. In order to find out what it felt like to be free, we had to mentally break free first. If you don't mentally break free, you ain't gonna never be physically free. No matter what you do, even if you attempt to walk in righteousness, that thing that should be freeing you is gonna be your bondage. So that's how we end up going from spirituality to religion, because you wanted to be in bondage to servitude. So now you got stuck in these religions. Religion's got a purpose, but you ain't using it for the right purpose. Using it to have a goddamn reason to blame God and the devil for your insecurities and your weaknesses that you don't want to let go. Preachers sit there and tell you all day long to give up your demons, your vices. Some of them still have them too. You got to remember, just because a man walk the path don't mean he ain't going to fall down sometime. You know, you don't want the perfect leader, because if he look too perfect, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, you need to look again. Ain't nobody that is not walked in the shoes of the worst of the worst, through the hardest of times and the difficulties and struggles. If they haven't been through what we've been through, they can't tell you how to get out of it. If they don't have a determination to get themselves out of it, they can't tell you how to get out of it. And when you talking about Ein Sof, when you're talking about capturing this wisdom and making the final connect, it's going to do something that's going to have an effect, that's going to be a radiant effect. And a lot of people are going to resent not having their insecurities to hold on to, like they was free falling off a cliff and caught a branch. They gotta have those weaknesses to feel alive because they don't want to develop the strengths. It's like being the greatest singer in the world, but ain't nobody hear you because you're always singing in the basement in the shower. What good is it to have a gift if you can't share it? Why would you turn it into a curse? So we have to always be cognizant. You're right, man, babe. But it's not, sometimes you have to see somebody else break free. You don't know what it look like, you don't got nothing to compare it to. If you don't know what it look like, you don't got nothing to compare it to, you have to find something to compare it to, even if you have to create it yourself. So I didn't see, I seen a lot of leaders, or what we call them leaders. They never told you where they was going. So they didn't have a destination. So they didn't have a destination. Y'all was all walking to nowhere together. You know, they had ideas, but the ideas were not true liberating ideas. You need a fusion of spirit, science, and matter. You need a diffusion of the three within any movement in order to understand what the problem and the solution is. If you can't look at it from a civilian perspective and a military perspective, you have caught. You know? Most people only good at one field. They only study one field, one thing. And they become so good at that one thing that it turns them into an idiot. It turns into an educated fool because they have no clue about the next things that matter on a unified field concept. All of this stuff is related because everything that's without is a reflection of everything that's within. As you learn from learning to write your book of life and identify it, you start finding out that those things which were lacking on the inside is what you've been chasing on the outside. And not until you've assimilated that idea will your wisdom be able to rise to another level. So, the totem animals teaches us lessons. Mine being the gorilla, my familiar being the canine. Those are for purposes. The whole gorilla scenario, RH positive blood, reclaiming the blood right. The mitochondrial influence over the primates is matriarchal. You know, reestablishing the mother at her rightful position and ready to go to war with anybody who want to interfere with that. I'm going to make this as clear as possible. And from the perspective and the lenses of wisdom, I'm going to tell you exactly what I see the problem is. The matriarchal system was established because of a matriarchal planet Earth is feminine. Prime creator, what we call in ancient Kemet Tawaret, is feminine. As she becomes incarnate, you see her symbol as the hippopotamus with the human mammary glands. This is the same as when you see your slave antebellum mammy statue. It's the same symbolism, the same meaning. And those were symbols to represent the mother of creation in her true position, because when you look at the zodiac, you got the 12 signs of the zodiac in a 360-degree circle. And in the center of that 363 circle is the seat of the great mother. They don't tell us that because they blinded us by moving her sun in the field of view. So you can never see her for what she really is. And this was your patriarchal eclipse. They call it the Kali Yuga. So while we were so focused on the sun, we never knew that he drew all of his light, his solar light, his Ra, came from the love of his mother through her mitochondria, radiating the love energy throughout creation. Without it, there is nothing. So when you start to assimilate the wisdom, and the first thing you realize that God ain't no man, and it's not possible that he could have ever been one, and that a man is a side effect of a woman, a mutation of a woman. When you get that first thing understood, and you get to see Sophia for what she really is, and she's not going to surrender, she's not going to bow down, she's not going to quit. She gonna make you earn her respect because you're gonna have to make her earn yours. This gonna be a two-way dance between y'all, always struggling. Kundalini rising. At some point, she finally stop and she look at you and say, it's time. The fight is over. And we have to realize one thing, that if anybody think that they're going to be able to be entitled, that's going to be the only crime. You can't think like that. That's the destruction of us. You know, that's the destruction of us. They cut the children off. They cut the children off from the elders systematically. Now, I talked about education on one of my other videos and step down education. Now, this goes directly to the severing of the wisdom from the elder to the youth. Everything was done in a tier system under the matriarchal system. The elderly women sat back and they watched over everything. Big Mama, my dear, they watched over Aunt May and Aunt Susie while they took care of the young mothers and made sure that they had everything right. Step down education, right? Now, watch this. Early education, before it was called a school, was step down education. And they had to get out of that and isolate all of the children so they could submit to authority. In step down education, you passing the wisdom from the elders to the vigor of the youth so that they can control their passions and desires as they grow up. When you turn that off, you have breaks. You have breaks in wisdom where an intelligent child make a foolish decision because there's no saturation of the wisdom through the step down method that they were receiving. This is why we wrote Aesop's fables. There's stories in there. It sounds like you're reading for an adult, but look at the level the children have failed from Aesop's fable to Sam and Meg. Aesop's fable was bedtime stories for 2-year-olds when they were written. Think about that. Read a 2-year-old book now and you're going to see a bunch of pictures that don't have but like 3 words. Aesop's fable was bedtime stories for children. There's a catch to Aesop's fable. Aesop's fables implant jewels and gems that will be cultivated over a lifetime as the child learned to read signs and symbols as he developed. But we don't read that no more. We read children's stories like the dog ran behind the cat. Slow their brain down, you can interfere with their processing. We're talking about the development of wisdom. It would be better to read Proverbs and Ecclesiastics every night at bedtime than to read what they got us reading now. My mom, that's the only 2 books I used to read in the Bible for a very long time. Because the rest of that stuff was not food for thought yet. I wasn't wise enough to see the wisdom in that. In Daniel being the judgment. You know? Uriel, fire God, all those kinds of things didn't make sense to me at that time, so I couldn't assimilate that, but I could assimilate a good name. It's more valuable than diamonds and gold. In the Proverbs, it made sense. You know, who want to go through life with a name like Shithead? You know, but how would you feel if your name was King or Queen? Just the difference in the name changes the way the person feel. We give people namesakes, name them after somebody. We don't tell them why we did it. There used to be an integral part of namesakes, naming your child after your brother because your brother was a stand-up mofo. We lost track of that. You know, these are just some of the things I see. Looking at it eye to eye with Sophia. 14. What about the 14, Elaine? The whole breakdown, like when you listening to the Bible on tape versus reading it, you get different set of lessons. And I couldn't understand that. Why does it sound different than when I'm reading it? You know. Then when you look at different legends from around the world, and then these stories, and you start moving up to the meet Sophia eye to eye, these stories start lining up with each other out of nowhere. That's called a convergence. All things moving into a central point. And the convergence is a downward spiral or an upward spiral, but it's a spiraling effect. In my case, spiraling toward the center of the self, wondering why you can't release certain things externally that you have internally as a representation, and then you start to understand why. Yep, Daniel 14:27. Yep. But the name Daniel means judgment of El, or the judgment of God, just the name. Daniel being the great judge, we not really understanding what's going on there. That's taken from a Sumerian court order, the book of Daniel. And what had happened in that era, there's one visit of what they call Anu, the king of the gods, in the Sumerian doctrine, coming to earth. He was Daniel, because he was the king of the gods. Now remember, it was 3 of them that was captured by Nebuchadnezzar. It was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 was Enlil, Enki, and Anu. And it was only one, they called him Nebuchadnezzar. Nebo meaning the light. Think about that. They called him Nebuchadnezzar, and then they cursed him to be as a beast of the field for a period of time. Right? Now, what we're not realizing that that's telling us he's going to be going through something called Dark Night of the Soul. That's your book of Job. Now go to the beginning of Job, you see that the devil never tried to do anything to Job. God threw Job to the devil. Hey, you check out my son Job, you better go get him. God did that, not the devil. See, everybody be mad at the devil, but that was Anu issuing the decree for Enlil to have the right in order to blind Nebuchadnezzar. These stories are all overlapping Sumerian doctrine. This is Sumerian text that was filtered through the Babylonians and fed to the world as the Bible in the Christian church through Rome. So the stories are intertwined. They're wove like fabric. You got to take it apart and realign it in order to know what's taking place. Now, in order to understand why Anu even had to come down here for leave Nibiru, you would have had to know that the story was like this. There was a war in heaven. That was Nibiru. What happened up there? Well, the queen of heaven and earth gave birth to a son and pissed Enlil off, and he became jealous. This is your war in heaven. They talk about it in the Gita. Look at how Arjuna's talking about family members, asking Krishna about the family members on both sides of the conflict. It's all the same story spread out all over the world so that we can stay in this shit forever. I'm not buying it. So the blood, according to Genesis, the conflict or the enmity was between the woman seed and the serpent seed. Now, if you look at the zodiac, between Virgo and Scorpio, there is the zodiacal sign of Libra, which is the scales of justice. At one time, Scorpio and Virgo was the exact same sign. The indiscretion there tells us that the Libra or the injustice was placed between them. So the justice had to be established between the Virgo or the young maiden or Venus and Scorpio or Mars, the god of war. So something happened between the god of war, Mars, and Venus that made the gods give a judgment, and it had to be resolved through the laws of Mott, because that's where you get your scales of justice to begin with. Right? So in resolving this injustice, what was the injustice? It was the separation of the wisdom from the divine love when they gave the eclipse. The eclipse, or the trying to block out the mother by using and exalting the male or the son. The eclipse. And so when you're looking at what they're telling you in the stories are all interlocking together. Right? And that's why I didn't tell you Revelations that whenever all of the book, everybody was waiting on somebody to read the book, it was only one person that could read the book. Because it take a long time for DNA to spread out to its maximum point in which it can't spread anymore before it starts to come back in into a singularity. It starts out divergent, then it becomes convergent. And the convergence creates your insurgence. They tell it to you in the movies. The DNA got to go out to critical mass, and then it has to implode. Explode, implode. It's the DNA chain. In order for that same signature of DNA, it'll be a different body, but the DNA numbering system has a variable that is limited before it reproduces the exact same sequence that it did in order to facilitate the same refractions of light at your DNA level. In order for all of those rays of light to line up the way they did in a prior era, in order for you to build everything back to where it was, your DNA have to go through a whole lot of changes over a whole lot of time, and then all of a sudden it'll be the exact same DNA sequence. So now, when you do a DNA test for a child, they look for certain markers, never telling you that those markers have a limit to where you can read them. So they keep us confused. See, now they want to keep us idiots forever. The only way to keep us idiots forever is to do one thing. The people to desire to be an idiot and be under oppression forever more than they desire to be free. You have to want to be oppressed more than the oppressor wants to oppress you in order to remain afflicted at this point. And so they keep telling us all these different things. You know, I got, people send me messages and tell me certain stuff. But my thing is this. I'm doing my part. I can't do your part. I can't work with nobody that don't want to work with me because that's irrational and foolish. And I just hope these people don't keep this oppressive, artificial light matrix in position. They trying to trap us once again through CERN so y'all know what's going on over there. It's not going to work this time, though, because the contingency is already at play. But they trying. Y'all just need to be aware. And they already didn't confess to it. So when we try to get the key to here, we normally get stuck here. That's why I say, seeing they will not see, hearing they will not hear, for their hearts have waxed cold. Well, what does the word wax mean? Think about that. It didn't just turn cold, or it didn't freeze, it was waxed cold. Think about that. Then start talking to some of your key young masters and asking what are they seeing in the heart chakras of these people they've been healing. Then you start making sense. Their hearts were waxed cold. It didn't turn cold. It wasn't made cold. It's black magic or sorcery, wickedry, whatever you want to call it. It's still science. It's just a type of science that's not for the benefit of the most people. And as long as people ignore the facts, they can't never break it. So you got to stop and turn around and look you in your face and say, I ain't running no more. And you got to stop running too. You got to come one with the wisdom. The Ein Sof. Put on the crown. But I just had a few things on my mind about the wisdom and the philosophers. The Socrates, the Platos, the Aristotles, the Gurdjieffs, ancient mystic masters. All these people did all that suffering. It just don't make sense to me. And people honor them for their suffering. They went to all that suffering for you to get from under the suffering, but now that it's time to get from under the suffering, you won't do it? That don't make no sense. You reverence everybody that struggled to get you from under struggling, but you don't want to take a couple of little hits to get from under the oppression. And blame everybody else so you don't have to deal with what you are on the inside. Everything you chasing on the outside of you is what you're chasing on the inside of you. That's your clue. And it's not really a clue because it's direct. Because I don't like hiding, I don't like ducking. If I got something to tell you, the deceiver used deception. I don't need it. I use it, but I don't need it. Because I walk right up to him and sever his head. It don't matter to me one way or the other. So we got to realize if we ever want to get free, we have to control our energy. That's the simplest way to look at it. Control your energy. Optimize your energy. Become energy efficient within the self. Don't just give yourself and your energy away willy-nilly. And don't keep accepting this oppressive stuff or you're going to be stuck in it. Because I'm not finna be stuck in it. I'm done with it. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to go play with my dogs a little bit. Probably walk down to the lake. But